Hi there, my name is Matthew Sidji, and I'm a second-year PhD student at the University of Melbourne. I'm going to present my first research paper, The Hidden Rules of Hanabi, How Humans Outperform AI Agents. This work was supervised by Professor Wally Smith and Dr. Melissa Rogerson. As we see AI integrate more closely within existing human teams, human-AI cooperation has become a strong focus of AI research. One particularly important human ability for operating within a team is our ability to use theory of mind reasoning. So theory of mind reasoning is the ability of an agent to reason about another agent's internal beliefs, intentions, and desires. Our ability to do this develops around ages 4 to 6, and we use it almost every day when we work, drive, or navigate a sidewalk. So AI researchers are currently attempting to develop AI with this theory of mind reasoning capability. And as has been the tradition in AI development, a certain game that requires theory of mind reasoning has become a benchmark for these types of AIs. And the cooperative card game Hanabi has become a challenge for AI developers due to it requiring high levels of theory of mind reasoning in order to play it well. So in order to give a bit of an understanding of why Hanabi was chosen as a benchmark, I'm going to first go through the rules of the game. As I said, Hanabi is a cooperative card game where a team of players work together to make ordered stacks of cards or tiles. It's kind of like cooperative solitaire. The cards come in 5 colors or suits and have the numbers 1 to 5. The aim of the game is to play the cards from your hand in ascending order for each suit. You get a point for each correctly played card for a maximum of 25 points. Now, what makes Hanabi interesting is that the cards are held in your hand backwards, meaning you can't see what's in your hand, you can just see what's in everybody else's hand. So on your turn, you can give a clue to other players so that they can infer what cards they hold, and therefore play the correct cards. The way players give clues is restricted to just colors or number, and must refer to all the cards that relate to that clue. There's also a limited amount of clue tokens, which can be regained by discarding cards. If your team places 3 incorrect cards, you lose the game. So, while there's been a lot of progress in recent years in the development of one specific category of Hanabi AI agents, namely self-play, this is where each agent goes into the game with an understanding of what strategy their teammates are going to use. The other setting, ad hoc, where agents have no pre-game knowledge of agreed upon communication strategies, are proving much more difficult. So while self-play has been solved by sidestepping, developing theory of mind reasoning, it seems a theory of mind is essential to effective play in ad hoc scenarios. Humans, on the other hand, operate in ad hoc Hanabi settings really well, with even first-time players often scoring higher than the current best ad hoc Hanabi agents. Yet, an understanding of what humans are actually doing that makes them so much better, other than just kind of a nebulous idea of theory of mind reasoning, is surprisingly lacking from the current literature. If we had a more detailed understanding of what humans are doing that allow them to perform so well, perhaps we can find ways to include some of those into AI agents. This gap in the literature is what our study aimed to address. So, the aim of our study was to investigate the reasoning and communication practices used by teams of humans in order to understand how these contributed to their superior performance compared to AI agents. From this, we hope to produce some questions of consideration for designers of Hanabi AI agents. For the method, we used footage of live in-person Hanabi games from 3 different playgroups. This consisted of 14 participants. Players ranged in self-rated Hanabi skill, with some participants not having played the game before and others being much more experienced. We recorded gameplay from both a bird's eye perspective and player point of view. So to do that, we used eye tracking glasses purely as a qualitative tool in order to immerse the researcher into the context of play. The footage was then transcribed, and this included both the audio, so the utterances, but also the actions, because oftentimes information was communicated silently in the form of actions. And then reflexive thematic analysis was done on these transcripts. So this resulted in 4 themes that define the communication and reasoning practices used by human Hanabi teams that we argue contribute to their superior performance to AI. So firstly, artifact manipulation. We found that players use the physical game pieces to store and communicate information. Specific techniques were used repeatedly and observed between games. We found three broad categories of artifact manipulation. Firstly, rotation, which represented whether a player knew something or didn't know something about the card or tile that they had. Reordering was used to represent how long a card or tile has been in a player's hand. And finally, repositioning was reserved for special types of cards, where players typically held their cards between thumb and forefinger, but other finger holding techniques became symbolic of other types of knowledge. So, for example, if something was a 5, because there's only one copy of each 5, also note that there is a tile version of the game where instead of cards, players use mahjong or domino style tiles, and the tiles afforded more means of interaction, and hence we observed more artifact manipulation and a wider variety. Secondly, players would coordinate with each other or the group's actions through nudging or group directives. This was typically done by stating some common knowledge, but at specific times. So while the knowledge was common, and hence no new information is being exchanged in this statement, the specific timing gave implications to either the active player in the form of nudging or the group as a whole in the form of a group directive. So for example, in the top right-hand corner of the screen here, in game 3, player 1 is the active player highlighted in green. There are no clues at the time, so they can only discard or play a card. They indicate that they intend to discard in order to regain some clues. Player 2 gives a rules reminder that one can discard or play on one's turn. This is nudging player 1 to think about any playable card that they might have, which they did have at the time, and ultimately led player 1 to play that card. And again in game 3, we can see player 1 stating the board state out loud. The team was currently missing the first red card. In saying that, player 1 is bringing the group's attention to this goal and hence focusing and coordinating the rest of the team on placing this card. So thirdly, throughout the game, we observed players adopting roles which influence what they did and how they were interpreted by others. These were typically based off player experience, and players could be categorized as either leaders or followers. So depending on a player's role, the same literal action has different implicit meaning. So for example, in this game here, in game 3, player 2 was a leader, as they were the only experienced player. And here player 2's question is really a nudging action, prompting player 1 to do something else. So what can I tell you? Do you need to tell me anything? And that's prompting player 1 to do something else. Finally, players continually negotiated what I term grey rules. These are sort of house rules about things that are not directly addressed in the rulebook. This could include things like how to hold the cards in your hand, whether you announce if you're discarding or playing a card, and if you're allowed to ask other players what they know about the cards in their hand. Often grey rules gave players more opportunity for skillful play and extra channels of communication. So from our findings, we can see that one reason humans are able to easily engage in theory of mind reasoning in Hanabi is because they utilize the physical artifacts of the game as representations of each other's internal minds. This is the idea of distributed cognition or feed-through, where team knowledge is distributed amongst players and physical game pieces. This not only meant that players could offload cognitive work onto the pieces, but that the pieces also then signaled private information to the teammates. This way, players could communicate information through this physically embodied medium. Another important point from our study was that the observed behaviors corresponded to the literature's requirements of what it means to operate in a team structure, rather than merely a cooperative group. So teams need a shared common goal, which we saw in the form of, say, group directives. Team members needed to know and fulfill their roles, either as a leader or a follower. And teams need a shared mental model, which we observed our participants doing when they mimicked actions, clarified meanings, and negotiated common understandings of rules. So from this study, we now have a stronger understanding of what communication and reasoning behaviors humans are doing in ad hoc games of Hanabi, and how these contribute to their superior performance when compared with AI. This has implications for the design of AI teammates in Hanabi. So a next step for this would be to embody an AI agent either through a robot or in VR. This would allow artifact manipulation to be utilized by AI. I think developers should also consider what roles the AI agent will play within the team and how those should be determined. Thank you for watching.